Hello and welcome to this new tutorial, and in this tutorial we will see how we can change the contrast and the brightness of an image. So in this tutorial I will show you what we want to achieve is we will basically open an image, and then when we click on this menu, now you can see that we can change the contrast of this image, and using this brightness we can change the brightness of the image. So this is what we want to learn in this tutorial. So let's get started. I already configured the project and I'm using Emgu CV 4.4. If you don't know how to configure it, you can check one of my previous videos. So let me go and add a new menu item here in the processes in the image, and I'm going to write brightness, and you need to put two and signs and contrast, and double click on it. In fact, I will open a new window and I want to work with the image in a new form, so I will create a new form. To add a new form, we will right click on the project, go to the add and form, Windows form. We can give it a name like form brightness contrast, and click on add. So here just I want to design a little bit. What I want is I want to save the results also, so I need a menu item. First I will put a panel, and we can dock this panel to the top, and inside it I would like to a menu strip, and in this menu strip we can write something like file, and we can open an image, open, and we can also save the image. Okay, so let me move it a little bit on top. Okay, and another panel that I would like to put it here, and I want to dock it. In fact, instead of panel I should bring up a control box. So this control box, and I want to dock it at the bottom, and we can give it a title like brightness. So this one will basically control the contrast. Let me write contrast first, and another this group box, and I want to give it a title like brightness, and I want this one to be docked to the right side, right here. Okay, and let me reduce it a little bit. That's fine. Okay, and we would like to control the contrast and the brightness using a trackbar. So I'm just going to drag and drop one trackbar here and another trackbar right over there. And quite few things that I would like to do is I just want to dock it to the top inside that uh, group box. And for this one, trackbar true, I want to this orientation to be vertical, and I also want to dock it to the left. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I should increase a little bit more so that it becomes clear for us. Okay, so and also we don't have, unfortunately, the values. Let's say I want to change the contrast from between 0 minimum and 100 maximum, and it's up to you how much you want to change it. And also for the contrast, what I will do actually is between 0 and 500. But this contrast should be not in integers. I would like to change it actually between 0 and 1. And as we have already seen that this is what we want, this alpha should be greater than 0, and we don't want to be, it's a very big number, it can be a float number. So I want to vary this alpha or the contrast between 0 and 1, so I need to do something. So I just keep 0 and 500 just to show the integers, and we will divide it by 100. Okay, and also one more thing I want to do here is auto size is equal to false, so that I want to keep it a small one. And similarly for this one, auto size I would like to put it to the false, and I want to keep it a small one. Okay, that's great. And unfortunately we cannot see the values here. What is the current value? And I want to put its current value to be equal to 1, so I don't want to change it. So let me put the value to be 100. So here is the value and I put it 100. We need a few labels, and I'm just going to bring one label for the minimum value, one for the current value, one we will show its maximum value. Similarly for this one, the maximum value that we want to show here, the current value, and also the minimum value. So I want to dock all of them, not dock, it should be the anchor all to the right. So instead of left and a top, I just want to make sure that they are only docked to the right. And similarly for these, we want to change the anchor properties from left and top. Instead they should be anchoring to the bottom. And also the names I will change for them, because I would like to access from the code, so I call them LBL minimum contrast. This one should be like LBL current contrast, and this one is LBL max contrast. Similarly, we can do it for the LBL max brightness. I just copy it, and here I will do the current brightness, and this one should be the minimum. Okay, and here what I will do is put a picture box. In fact, putting the picture box, I will first put a panel here. Now panel should be docked in the container, so that to the parent, and we can see it to the maximum. And also I will do the same thing for this picture box, and I would like to zoom it first, size mode, and then dock in the parent container, and that's it. So this form, or the brightness contrast controlling user interface, will basically get the image from our main form. So we will be using some sort of parameter constructor, receive that one here, and we would like to display it. And later, if the user want to open a new one, he can do it, or if he wants to save the changed image, he can do that also. So the first thing that I will make a little change is, let us double click on this load. And in order to receive uh, data from the other form, or from the other class, let me do the easiest way is to make a public property. So I call it public prop. And before that, I need emgu.cv and emgu using emgu.cv.structure. And here in this property, I would like to receive an image that is BGR, and the depth we are assuming to be byte, and just call it img input. And so we can read and write it. So that's why we can read and write it. And during loading, I just want to check something, that if my it's okay, because the user will be able to, we can do something. If img input equals null, in fact not equals to null, then we can show this image in picture box. Picture box one dot image equals to img input, and that's it. Of course, dot a is bitmap. Okay, So from here, what I'm going to do is whenever I click on this brightness and contrast, so double click on it, the first thing I will always write is a try catch. And here, what I want to do is I want to check if my IMG input, I have created already a list or in fact a dictionary of these images that we have read, and this is the key. If this equals null, and before that, if there is nothing at all in my list, dot count equals 0, or we can throw an exception, throw new exception, and here we can write something like please select an image. Okay, so once we have the throw, then it will go to the cage, so we don't need to write an else statement, so we can go ahead and write the statement. So once I have the image, we can create the object of this form brightness contrast is equal to new, and don't forget to put this property, what we call it, img input is equal to, we will have an input if we have already read it, so just I want to make sure, and instead of using its reference I'm going to clone it, and then we can show the form dot show dialog as a dialog. In this form, the first thing that I want to do is to set these values, show what the values should be. So I'm just going to the code and to the load event right after that. And also we need to make sure here if img input equals null, then we can throw an exception, throw new exception, and we can say select an image. So once we have an image, what we can do here is to set those values for the labels. Let's say LBL current brightness dot text is equal to this value will come from trackbar2 dot value dot to string, straight away whatever the value we have, and LBL minimum brightness dot text, and this is already we have set it, so let me write it, or maybe if you have set it from trackbar2, then we can say minimum dot to string, and LBL max brightness dot text. This is also again from the trackbar that we have already used, dot to not the value, it is maximum dot to string. Okay, so trackbar 2 is basically controlling the brightness, and this is trackbar 1. So, but for the trackbar 1, as I mentioned that we have set the minimum value to be 0 and the maximum value to be 500, but I want this contrast to be between 0 and 5. So what I will do is essentially divide these by 100, these numbers. So we can do something like this, label min bright contrast dot text is equal to, so here is the minimum value that we have, trackbar 1 dot value dot to string, just keep it as it is as we are starting with 0. Similarly for the max contrast dot text, so this is what the max should be divided by 100, so trackbar 1 dot value divided by 100, and then we can convert it into to string. But remember that if we divide, this is an integer, this is an integer, so it will result in an integer division. So what I want to avoid that, and I like to write it as a float. So when I convert it, the result can be a float number. Similarly, I do the same thing for LBL current contrast.text, and again we are getting, this should be the maximum here, sorry, divided by 100, and we are doing the current. So this is what we set the values in these labels for each of them. And then whenever I change the contrast, it will give, I want to change the contrast of my image, and whenever I change the brightness, I will change the brightness according to this formula. So we will multiply the image with the alpha and then add the beta. That is the brightness. So let's go and do that. Maybe we can create a function because we will be calling from both of them. So it will be easy to handle in one place. I call it private void a contrast brightness adjust, and try exception. If there is any exception, we can throw an exception. Message. Okay, what is going on? Message. Okay, so what we are going to do here is apply the formula. And what will be the formula is we have img input image dot, we are going to multiply this one with the value of the contrast, which is basically present in LBL current contrast dot text. And since we are expecting a float, so what I will do is, or a double, doesn't matter, double dot parse. Okay, so whatever the value I have in the current contrast, I multiply with it and add whatever the value I have in the brightness, so dot value, and that's it. And since we need to store this one, and we need to store this one into, since we need to store it in some variable, so I'm just going to create a variable, call it var img output, and that's it. So we have this output, and we can now show it in the picture box dot image is equal to img output dot is bitmap. By the way, since I also want to save it, so it will be better to create a global variable within this uh, class. So I'm just going to create image. It should be a btr and a byte, and we call it is equal to, okay, that's it. So we just created this variable as globally, and we did the using the current value of our track bar 1 and 2, we just apply the formula, multiply by image, multiply by the contrast plus whatever the brightness that we want. Okay, so from where I want to call this method is important. This method will be called only on this track bar changed event. So double click on that. So I just want to write this function. If there is any problem, then we will have the try catch. And similarly, I do the same thing for this track bar change because we want to change and see the result. So that's it, how we change the brightness and a contrast. And the final one thing that I want to do is to implement these two things. And what we can do is, I just want to, if we want to open an image, we can use open file dialog. We call it dialog is equal to new file dialog. And for the dialog.filter, if we want to select only images, let's say images The extension should be like JPG, semicolon, star dot PNG, semicolon. Let's say I want to support more BMP only. Okay. And then this is will be the description, and then we need to provide a pipe or this or block, and this is what we actually show the extensions. And now we can show this dialog to the user. Dialog.show dialog. If the user has selected, then the dialog result should be an OK. And then we can show the image. In fact, img input is equal to new input, and we want to read it from the dialog that has been selected, so file name. And of course we want to show it to the user that it has been read, so image picture box dot image is equal to dialog, sorry, img input dot bitmap is bitmap, and that's it. And similarly, if the user has done some changes and if he wants to save it, double click on the save, and most of the things will be the same, so I'm just going to copy, and in fact there should be a try catch also. Error can happen anywhere, so instead of the open file dialog I want to say save file dialog, and this dialog, and here we cannot give it separately, so what I will do here is we need to give it like this. This one will be for PNG files, sorry, and this will be the description. And again, I just want to write like this, images, extension will be like this, okay, and a pipe and a star.jp, sorry, png, semicolon. I have further extensions, I call it images, those are of bitmap, and then I will remove it here. So you can see this is the description and this is the extension, this is the description and this is the extension. So I want to save them in like one of these files, and dial, if it is okay, then what we can do is we don't need to do this. In fact, I want to save the output file, this output image, and we also need to make sure that my if img output equals null, then just I return do nothing. Else img output dot save. Where I want to save is the dialog dot file path, selected path, I guess, dot file name. So here we want to save it, and then we can also show a message to the user that image is file saved or image saved successfully. And one thing that I made, I think, a mistake right here is I should update this text label also. So what can I do here is basically what track bar dot value, and we need to divide it by 100. But before that, I should convert it into a float, okay, and then to assign it to the label, I need to convert it into a toString, and that's how we can adjust or get the updated value of the contrast from the label, and then we are multiplying it with the input image. And during the load, I also forgot to set the minimum value of the contrast, and the minimum value should also be divided by in the same way. I mean, I should divide it by 100, and then we need to convert it into .toString. So I think the minimum value should be the trackbar dot minimum. Instead, I should say the trackbar dot minimum. So let me run again. So file, open it, and this is the image and the images, brightness and a contrast. And so between 0 and 5, 0 and 100, and I'm just going to, so here is how I'm adjusting the brightness. So if I make it 0, of course the values are coming to the 0, and if I increase the contrast, this is the original contrast that is at 1, so we are not actually changing it. It means right here, and this is how we are changing the contrast. Similarly, if we change the brightness, as you can see, it becomes more and more bright, and if I reduce the contrast a little bit more, and so you can see the effect of the brightness also. The brightness will aid because we are adding the beta, so it will increase it, and then of course we are changing the contrast. And let's say I want to save this more contrast image, so I can go and save it, let's say on the desktop, and AJ, and here this is the filter that I provided, maybe JPG, PNG, or PMP. Let's say I want to save it as a PNG file, and it has been saved successfully. We can check from the desktop if it is saved. So here is what I saved, the more uh, brighter image. And if you want to open an image from here, a new image, it is possible, we can do it. Let's say this time I want to select this lion image, and then we can again do the same things as we did. And that's it. I hope you understand a little bit more about EmguCV, and hope to see you in another video.